we as humans, we're comparison engines, right? We're always doing this thing where we're kind of creating a reference point for ourselves and then uh, developing like an idea of how to improve on that. And that's actually really interesting because if you go and look at kind of the poorest countries in the world, there will still be a lot of happy people. And the richest countries in the world, there's still a lot of unhappy people. And that's because it's a reference point thing. So the way I kind of try to disentangle this, because you're right, that the outcome that you want and the outcome that others want don't always align. And that is where the modern world is kind of, there's this ability to impact supply and demand through, as you say, kind of interfering with decision making. So I don't know, let's say I'm like, if I just asked you, Zach, do you want this crate of tomatoes? I'll use tomatoes because I think it's the supply and demand example in most economics textbooks, or at least the one that I've seen lately. I'm like, do you want this crate of tomatoes? And you're like, straight away, there's an outcome for you. Like, do I want tomatoes? Do I not want tomatoes? And you say, no. Okay. So that's essentially supply and demand in its purest form. And I'm supplying the tomatoes and you don't want them. Then I'm like, you go, yeah, you do want them. And I'm like, okay, cool. How much would you be willing to pay for them? And now we align on a supply and demand price and you pay £10 for the crate of tomatoes. That's a really clear way, right? There's an outcome for you, which is you want to buy tomatoes as an outcome for me. Now, I actually have an ability to influence your outcome. And that's where it gets a lot more difficult because I can start going, your friends buy tomatoes. Why don't you buy tomatoes? Now I'm starting to actually input some new information into how you develop your outcome. So the way I kind of disentangle these things is looking at the motivation for the decision and trying to keep my motivations and my outcomes at the center of how I make decisions. And that's kind of also what I try to do. That, as you asked, like, what problem am I trying to solve? I'm trying to help those interacting with financial products keep their well-being, their motivations, their outcomes at the center of the decisions they make. So yeah, it's not easy, right? Because we all want different things, and that's natural. This is not to kind of say that you know that there's malice or nefarious approaches. There obviously are. There are nefarious approaches. I mean, think about the scam message that I'm sure we've all seen, which is like you have a package from DPD waiting, and which I think is a unbelievably smart scam, and I think it's caught a lot of people, and definitely almost caught me. Um, the motivation of the person sending you that is very different to the motivation of yourself, but they've realized they can hinge that motivation on your outcome. The outcome is you want your package. Yeah, I think I got quite convoluted there, but I hope that
No, no,
was.
no, no. It's a great answer. You're giving such good answers that there's many different roads that I can take, which is always good. Um, so I want to go back to a point that you made earlier. You said it's quite hard if someone asked you what happiness is to define that, and I agree with that. But then I find that if you said to me, "What is unhappiness?" that feels easy. I could feel like I could rattle off a load of things what unhappiness is. Um, do you think that's because we're innately negatively wired, or is there something else happening there that makes that so?
Oh, what a good question. I don't. I mean, I'm going to give you an answer off the top of my head. I don't have any previous exact like explicit work or views or research on this. It's a really good question. I mean, I'm a big fan of evolutionary behavioral thinking, right? So kind of a lot of the heuristics and ways we think and the structures to how we think are very much driven by the thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evolution and have come from keeping us alive. So the first thing I thought when you said that is if you just go back to the caveman era, and I'm not an anthropologist, so please don't ask me when that is and how long ago it was. And anyone listening, please don't crucify me. Um, what kept you alive more efficiently? Knowing what was dangerous or knowing what was really good for you? Probably the former. So it's interestingly, like you say, are we negatively wired? I think we're just wired to know what would harm us better than what might not, which is kind of like a self-preservation mechanism. And probably mentally we have that in the same way, right? Because I think the psychology and the way we think and make decisions is it's directly tied to that evolution. That's my opinion. So as you put it, it's very easy for me to go, "Ooh, that harms me," and I know at a baseline how to keep myself safe. Essentially, if we take the examples, like that thing there is dangerous. Those berries kill me. Staying out in the cold in the dark puts me in danger. If you think about silly example, but when turning off the lights and going up the stairs, it like brings a natural fear into yourself because of being followed, right? And that probably comes from the idea of walking with your back towards dark spaces, puts you in danger back in the day. So that's a really good point. And I think, yes, to answer directly and succinctly, yes, I think we are negatively wired, but I think it's because that is what's kept us alive. And then there's this flip side, which is far more open, creative, and more challenging. It's not this heuristic, this rule of thumb, this open-ended ability to optimize infinitely, which then in the modern world leads to like greed and capitalism and that sort of thing. Because there's always this question: is like, if you've grown to 10 million pounds and you've tripled every year for 5 years, why not stop, right? And I guess that's the flip side of it: is that you were never supposed to stop in caveman times because the only thing that would actually stop you is resource availability, and you could never achieve so many tomatoes that you could eat yourself to death. But technology and and kind of intellectual growth just outpaces anything that evolution or genetics can do, and then creates this problem where like the optimizing thinking actually has its own pitfalls.